Nerdrotic.com.
It has been 4,074 days since the release of the last book in the A Song of Ice and Fire series, A Dance with Dragons. And no, I'm not going to let that go. Now we have two fantasy series running at the same time. The Rings of Power, which is absolutely abysmal. You can check out my review right here. And House of the Dragon. Coincidentally, the premiere episode received 25 million views according to HBO over the course of a week here in the United States, which matches exactly the number of people who watched the premiere episode of The Rings of Power worldwide in one single day. Curious. The big difference is Amazon didn't use the term views. They didn't say 25 million people watched it. They said sampled, which is very interesting considering the Samba TV data we got today. According to them, 4.8 million people watched House of the Dragon through Roku and streaming on a television, and 1.8 million watched The Rings of Power over the same amount of time, 4 days.
Don't you think it's the least bit strange?
And I can say without a doubt that the show that is a prequel to the biggest television disaster in history, House of the Dragon, is much better than the show that might dethrone Game of Thrones Season 8 as the worst television disaster in history.
After all you have endured, it is only natural to feel conflicted.
Conflicted? Rhaenyra's hand. Frightfully dull.
Did I mention it's really bad? Sure I did. And knowing what I know, it doesn't get much better. But when it comes to the House of the Dragon, at this point, is it good enough to bring back the most spurned Game of Thrones viewer? And the answer is no. There's a lot of you out there who are not going to take a flyer on this series ever or are going to wait until it's completely done, and I don't blame you at all. That being said, the third episode was the best of the series so far. And Second of His Name is the first episode that doesn't need to lean heavily on Matt Smith.
From the beginning.
We start out with one of Corlys Valerian's men being nailed to a post so he can be eaten by crabs by the crab feeder. Then Matt Damon Targaryen flies in to save the day on his dragon Caraxes and promptly lands on the poor dude. Now we find out the crab feeder is actually a prince from Myr named Kragus, or at least he is in the books, and maybe we'll find out more about him later.
No.
Matt Damon Targaryen gets shot by one of the archers and has to fly away on his dragon, showing that the war isn't really going that well on the Stepstones. We follow that up with Aegon Targaryen's second name day. Who's Aegon Targaryen? Well, it's King Viserys' 2-year-old son with Alicent Hightower, showing that they got married, he got busy, and some time has passed. In this short scene, we also learn from Tywin Lannister that the war in the Stepstones is not going well if we didn't get that from the very first scene. And yes, we meet our first Lannister, and it will be interesting to see how people react to houses they recognize with different lords with different personalities. We also learned through a conversation between Otto Hightower and his brother, the Lord of the Hightower, Ormond, that people already see Aegon as the legitimate heir because he is the firstborn son. Once again, we see Princess Rhaenyra at the weirwood tree. Now, there never was a weirwood tree in King's Landing in Game of Thrones or the book, so this thing either gets cut down or it's a big change and it will be prominent later. Or it's just fan service. This is just a quick scene to show that things are a little bit icy still, apologies for the really on-the-nose description, between Rhaenyra Targaryen and Alicent Hightower. And once again, to compare this to Rings of Power, and I'll probably end up doing that a lot, in this few short minutes we got more story progression and character progression than we did in 2 hours with Amazon's billion-dollar show. In celebration of Aegon's second name day, King Viserys decides to take the whole family on a trip to the Kingswood for a hunt, and Rhaenyra Targaryen looks like the typical teenager on a road trip. Princess Rhaenyra doesn't really want to go because she doesn't think anyone is there for her, and that's where she's wrong. When King Viserys rolls up to the camp in the Kingswood, we get to see the Strongs. Lionel Strong, who is a member of the Small Council, his son Harwin Strong, or Breakbones, and Larys Strong, Clubfoot. Both characters will be kind of a big deal later. In the camp, Princess Rhaenyra walks in on the Lady Lannister and the Lady Redwine complaining about Corlys Velaryon and Daemon dragging them into a war in the Stepstones that the princess says they're not officially in. Then Princess Rhaenyra reminds Lady Redwine that she is just sitting around eating cake while men are dying. Larys Clubfoot works his way into the ladies' gossip pit, and I'm wondering if this is foreshadowing a Master of Whisperers in the future. Princess Rhaenyra also mentions that she hasn't talked to Daemon in quote-unquote years. And once again, I'm going to bring up the Rings of Power. At no time in this show do they stop everything to have another character describe another character's traits or describe to us what we can clearly see on screen. Later on, Rhaenyra gets a marriage proposal from Jason Lannister, and then she finds out the reason she's actually there.
Jason Lannister is an excellent match.
He's arrogant and so serious.
Well, I thought you might have that in common.
King Viserys and Rhaenyra have an argument in front of everyone in the tent that they are not above tradition and she needs to get married to propagate the line. To shore up her claim, Rhaenyra takes off on her horse. Kristen Cole goes after her. I wonder if they're setting up something there. And King Viserys has the look on his face that every father understands. Second of his name belongs to Paddy Constantine. King Viserys has gotten a little bit older. He's gotten a little bit fatter. His hairline is crawling back a little bit. He's missing 2 fingers. He's drinking too much, and there's something else wrong. And we learn all this through the lost art in Hollywood these days of showing, not telling. Now that Rhaenyra is of age, she's not the only one getting assaulted with marriage proposals. So is he.
What I offer you, the crown and your daughter, is strength.
Otto Hightower probably shows his hand a little bit too much by suggesting that Rhaenyra marries his 2-year-old grandson, Aegon.
Nani?
Rhaenyra's hand. Betroth them.
I came here to hunt, not to be suffocated by all this politicking.
Then Lord Lionel Strong, once again, years later, suggests the best proposal, having Rhaenyra marry Lord Corlys Velaryon's son, Laenor, which once again would ally the houses and solve a lot of problems. The only minor detail, Laenor is gay.
Man, everyone's gay once in a while.
I'm not gay.
This
How about we do
Hollywood.
this?
Meanwhile, in the Kingswood, Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen's having a little small talk and flirting with Sir Criston Cole. Then they're attacked by a boar. He kills it, but she was able to hold it off for a good long time. No way, that thing would have killed her. Rhaenyra finishes off the boar and gets blood all over her face and her hair, and that's what you call foreshadowing. Now, the reason they're in the Kingswood, aside from Aegon's second name day, is to hunt, and they are looking for what's called the White Hart, a giant white buck.
My name is Buck, and I'm here to...
Didn't find it, but they end up getting this one, and the king has a hard time killing it. If they had found the White Hart, then maybe King Viserys would have named Aegon his heir instead of Rhaenyra, because that's what this entire episode is about. Rhaenyra thinking she's going to get replaced by her brother and a lot of the realm wanting that to happen. King Viserys wasn't just hungover during the hunt. He is clearly in physical pain, and that's why he's been drinking to dull that this whole episode. Talking to Alicent, he wonders if he made the right decision. He shows regret. He actually thinks he killed his wife due to a dream.
My obsession killed Rhaenyra's mother.
Viserys.
I thought Rhaenyra was the way out of my abyss of grief and regret.
He had a dream that he had a son wearing Aegon the Conqueror's crown, and it turns out that dream is probably going to come true, just not in the way he thought. Everyone returns to King's Landing, and Otto Hightower starts plotting, and he really is turning into the Tywin Lannister / Littlefinger of this story. He tries to convince his very pregnant daughter, Alicent, that it's her son Aegon who is the one who's being robbed of the throne and not Rhaenyra.
Rhaenyra is a woman.
Just as Ormond Hightower told his brother Otto earlier on in the episode, it's now Otto who tells his daughter Alicent that it's up to her to convince King Viserys to make the right decision. Alicent tries to approach the subject of succession with King Viserys, but not very hard.
I was hoping we might discuss something.
After a brief discussion about Rhaenyra that we'll get to in just a moment, there is the letter from Vaemon Valerian, brother of Corlys, obviously written behind his back. That is a plea for help in the Stepstones. So in this conversation between Alicent and King Viserys, she suggests both to help Daemon in the Stepstones and to guide Rhaenyra into marriage by making her believe she is the one choosing. Again, for the entirety of second of his name, Rhaenyra has thought that she was going to get shipped off to some lord and replaced by her brothers, and a lot of the lords believe that too. Turns out she was wrong. After a brief argument, King Viserys tells Rhaenyra that she is indeed his heir, and he has no intention of replacing her, although he did waver, and he tells her she can choose her husband.
Find one that pleases you. as I did.
Rhaenyra seems happy and everything's going to turn out okay.
Facing down high probability of civil war. And I know it sounds crazy.
We are in a cold civil war, to a potential civil war.
People might say I'm a little alarmist when I mention a potential civil war.
Civil war. Talk of civil war. We're in a civil war. We are in it. Civil war. Civil war.
Well, as they've been telling us this entire episode, things are not going well in the Stepstones. The dragons are useless because the crab feeder and his men keep running in the caves like little bitches. Corlys Velaryon and his son Laenor are fighting with his brother Vaemon. Sellswords and mercenaries are abandoning them, and they're running really low on ships. Laenor suggests sending Daemon out on a suicide mission so they can draw out the men to ambush them. When Daemon returns, he receives a letter from his brother King Viserys telling him that he doesn't want him to fail in his mission and he's going to be sending some help. Then Daemon beats the crap out of the messenger. As King Viserys said earlier in the episode, Daemon would rather die than ask for help, and he would also rather die than get help. Matt Daemon Targaryen then Gendry Baratheons his way over to the Crab Feeders Island, throws up a false peace flag, and nobody's going to believe him ever again, and draws out the Crab Feeder and his men. Matt Daemon Targaryen gets on his knees, offers up his Valyrian steel sword, Dark Sister. Oh, don't do that. And once the men get close, he commences to hacking his way through them. And I have to agree with Razorfist, Matt Smith makes a great Elric of Mel Nimaday. And I love this scene, and sure, there was a lot of arrows that conveniently missed Matt Daemon Targaryen, but he does eventually get hit in the end. It ends up drawing out more men, and that's when Corlys and Laenor with his dragon come in. It's a brutal battle, limbs getting hacked off, decapitations, a flying dragon burning people to a crisp, and this is one of the reasons I like fantasy, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Usually I despise when things happen off screen, like in Pirates of the Caribbean when they killed the Kraken in between films, but this really worked for me. Matt Daemon Targaryen chases the crab feeder into a tunnel, and the next time we see him, he's dragging out what's left of the crab feeder, holding Dark Sister with a dragon flying in the background. It was cool, and when properly motivated, Daemon gets done. I also think it's important to mention that towards the end of the episode, Matt Smith did not speak a line of dialogue. While that was horrible in the final episode of Game of Thrones Season 8, when we had people staring at stuff for almost a half an hour, this completely worked. And it turns out we didn't learn very much about the crab feeder, and we didn't need to, because this battle wasn't just for battle's sake. Unlike that useless troll battle in the beginning of the Rings of Power, this one serviced the character of Daemon Targaryen. When Daemon was rowing out to the Crab Feeders Island, we got a voiceover of King Viserys reading the letter. And it sounded kindly, but we know that's not the way Daemon heard it in his head.
It is instead my hope that this aid will deliver the victory that has thus far evaded us.
And that's the end of the episode, and I thought this was the first one that was really good from beginning to end. Well paced, well acted, and it belonged again to Paddy Constantine playing the tortured King Viserys. And Rhys Ifans?
Rhys Ifans.
Otto Hightower is turning into a proper bastard, which every show needs. Still, this isn't the greatest television ever made. I would say it's a 6 or 7 out of 10, and quite frankly, we have to factor in that there has been so much shit out there that this just might be a small oasis. Not to say there isn't problems. One of the showrunners just left, Miguel Sapochnik. Of course, this is a prequel to Game of Thrones, which ends in the disastrous seasons 7 and 8, and 2 of the main characters will be changing actors in the next couple of episodes. But it is nice to have something to mildly look forward to so far, and yes, it is 1,000 times better than the giant dumpster fire known as the Rings of Power. Don't forget to catch Mauler, Shad Brooks from Shadiversity, yours truly, and some other guests as we discuss the House of the Dragon after every episode, 9-10 p.m. Central every Sunday. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.